I'll talk, I'll talk about how at Ricoh UK Products Ltd, we've started to use AI to make smarter ideas at scale. So just a brief introduction. I'm Courtney. I work at Ricoh UK Products Ltd, predominantly within the marketing and communications team. However, alongside my role, a big part of what I do involves working with different teams, simplifying processes, improving access to information, and supporting employee engagement alongside continuous improvement. Over the last year, we've been exploring how we can use AI in a really practical way to generally help people in their day-to-day work. And today I'll be sharing one of those use cases, so how we've used AI to support employee engagement and recognition and what we've learned along the way. I'm going to briefly let Jane explain our CI engagement program at RPL, and then I'll get into the use case.
Hello, everybody. Most of you know who I am anyway. Most of you know who I am anyway. My role, I'm in the employee engagement department. I manage the rewards and recognition schemes that we run here at Ricoh, and I organise the awards ceremonies as well. So a little bit about the suggestion scheme. We've had a suggestion scheme for over 30 years, and we joined Ideas UK in 2002 with a view to improve our Bright Ideas scheme by sharing best practices with other members. From implementing some of the best practices, we were able to move from gold and received our very first platinum accreditation in 2007, which was a very proud moment for us. And last year, Ideas at the Idea conference, I was proudly presented with our 17th platinum accreditation. In 2024, I shared with the Ideas UK conference how Ricoh now have a proven, resilient scheme that has battled through several problems, not least the COVID pandemic. So what is next for this great scheme that we have? We want to make it easy for our suggesters to raise higher quality ideas, which will reduce the workload of our evaluation panel and the administration of the ideas. Firstly, I would like to just go through the workflow of the scheme with you. We run a 3-track scheme, which a best practice we shared from Ideas UK member. Firstly, the fast track. These are what we call local ideas that can be implemented by the team and needs no input from a specialist. We then have fast track for review. These are also ideas that can be implemented by the team, but the benefits may deserve a further award and will go to a panel for evaluation. And then we have our specialist track. These ideas will require specialist input to implement and quantify any benefits the idea states it can achieve. The fast track review and specialist ideas are evaluated by a panel of subject matter experts related to the area for the improvement. And I would say 50% of these ideas are sent backwards and forwards for more information, either by the specialist or the evaluation panel, or both. This can happen a number of times and cause a delay in both awarding the suggester, and implementing the idea so that the benefits can be realised. For me, this is not about increasing the amount of ideas we receive. We beat our targets set every year. It is how we can increase the quality of the ideas by giving the suggester a tool to encourage them to add the detail we need. And this is where the lovely Courtney comes in with her great knowledge of AI and how it can help us. Over to you, Courtney.
Yes. So before introducing any solution, we spent time understanding the reality of how idea management works in practice. What we found, as Jane mentioned, wasn't a lack of ideas. Employees had good ideas and positive experience that they actually wanted to share, but the challenge was more around how these ideas were being captured. So without the guidance at the point of writing, people often struggled to structure their thoughts, clearly explain the value, or understand what the review panel were expecting from them. Time and confidence also played a role. So writing a strong submission takes effort, and without support, that becomes a barrier. And from a process perspective, incomplete or unclear submissions often require follow-ups, as Jane mentioned, from the review panel or the specialist, which slows down evaluation and decision-making. So the opportunity wasn't to generate more ideas, it was to make it easier for the people to express them more effectively at the start. So in terms of our goal, so once we understood what the challenges were, the goal wasn't to redesign the schemes or add more to the process. What we wanted to do was make it easier for people to contribute in the first place. The key shift for us was thinking about when support is provided. So traditionally, the support comes after the submission when it goes to that specialist or review track, when reviewers go back with questions or requests for more detail. What we wanted to do instead was move that support earlier, providing guidance whilst employees are creating the ideas and nominations, not after they'd already submitted it. Alongside that, we wanted to improve the overall quality and clarity of submissions without making the process more complicated. It was really important that this felt simpler and not more complicated, so helping employees clearly structure their thoughts, articulate benefits, and meet review expectations was important. By streamlining the experience, it would make it quicker and easier to contribute without adding complexity or extra steps. And ultimately, this is about unlocking more value from the engagement that we already have existing in the company by capturing more actionable ideas and meaningful recognition by supporting existing intent. Because the ideas and intent are already there, it's just about helping people express them more effectively. So we believed to achieve this goal, we could explore how AI could be used to provide real-time support within that existing process. So we didn't want to introduce AI just for the sake of it. It had to solve a real practical problem. We started by exploring the different AI platforms and approaches to understand what could be implemented securely and effectively. But just as important was keeping it simple. So we wanted to prioritize solutions that integrate into the existing process and doesn't add additional systems or complexity. And then finally, governance was one of the biggest considerations right from the start, making sure any solution considered data security, approved content, and kept that human oversight throughout. So that's what led us towards the idea of using custom AI knowledge assistants, something that could provide guidance in real time and still operate within clear boundaries and controls. So in terms of the evaluating the tools, we looked at two different pieces of software. We wanted to balance flexibility, usability, and also that governance, testing what worked in practice before deciding how we're going to implement it at scale. We started off by using ChatGPT. It was a software that we already used, but it allowed us to prototype quickly. It allowed us to test ideas, refine prompts, and really understand how the experience could work for the employees. But as we moved more towards implementation, governance became the key consideration. So at Ricoh, we already operate within the Microsoft 365 environment. So Copilot Studio offered a more secure and controlled environment, which also aligned with our existing systems and policies. So we decided the approach to take was to use ChatGPT to learn fast, test and refine the concepts, but then actually implement the AI assistance in Copilot. To keep that balance between experimentation and governance was really important in making this solution work. So what we built, so we actually developed two AI-powered assistants to support employees in creating clearer, more consistent submissions without changing the existing processes. The first, what we built was a Bright Ideas assistant, which helps employees with submitting ideas, ensuring they define the present situation, suggested improvement, and predicted benefits, which is the structure of the current Bright Idea scheme. Secondly, there was the Values Recognition Assistant, which supports employees with raising recognition for their peers. It guides employees to select the right category, clearly explain the impact, link their actions with our values, and also create a concise nomination for them. Both of these were designed to support employees at the point where they're creating the submissions and helping them structure their thinking and improve clarity. But the key point is that they don't replace the employee. This is to act as a coach, guiding them through what good looks like and helping refine their responses. And importantly, this all works within the existing processes. The outputs are ready to copy directly into the current forms, so we're improving how people complete them without changing the systems itself. So in this example, I'm going to talk just about our Bright Idea assistant and how we built them. So we designed the assistant to follow a very structured approach based on key sections that reviewers already focus on. So that was the present situation, the suggested improvement, and the predicted benefits. Secondly, we made sure that the interaction is a guided step-by-step. So it starts off with simple questions and then builds up on the detail, prompts for any missing details, and then highlights what the reviewers would expect and refines that response. Then we made sure to ground everything in approved internal guidance so that the assistant reinforces what's already expected in the scheme and the criteria that is already been set out, rather than introducing anything new. And finally, it was important that we set clear boundaries. So we don't want it to submit on behalf of users. We don't want it to invent data or assumptions. And we need to make sure it's encouraging realistic and implementable ideas. So it always keeps employees in control. So the goal is to support better thinking and clearer submissions, not automate in the process. So in terms of how we actually created the AI assistants, one of the biggest lessons from building them was that the quality of the output depends heavily on the quality of the prompt design. So for me, it came down to 5 key rules. So that was be clear on the role. So make sure you define what the assistant is and what it is not. Structure the interactions. That's breaking tasks into clear, simple steps aligned to the real process. Guide, don't generate. So prompt users with focused questions rather than producing answers for them. Setting boundaries, so defining what the assistant should not do. And using real context, so basing responses on improved internal guidance, not generic or external information. So having these prompts helped move the assistant from being something generic to something genuinely useful in a real business process. I'll walk through each of them using the Bright Ideas assistant as an example. So I'll show you on the right hand side. So this is the prompt that has actually been used to train the assistant. So the first rule was being clear on the role. I didn't want it to feel like a generic chatbot, so I don't want it to take over the process. So right at the beginning of the prompt, I defined exactly what it is. So you are the Bright Ideas assistant for Ricoh UK Products Ltd. That gives it a very specific purpose. Your purpose is to help employees develop, structure, and strengthen Bright Idea submissions so they meet the Bright Idea scheme requirements and are more likely to be improved and implemented. You do not submit ideas on behalf of users. You coach, prompt, challenge, and refine their thinking. This all matters because role clarity shapes tone, behavior, and trust. If the AI's role is vague, the output also becomes vague. The second rule was structuring the interaction. So as I mentioned, we want a step-by-step guidance. Instead of asking AI to just write a bright idea, I broke down this process into the actual stages that matter in the real form and review process. So firstly, the assistant introduces the 3 sections up front. That's the present situation, the suggested improvement, and the predicted benefits. This does 2 things. It helps AI stay organized, and it also helps the employee understand the journey that they're about to go to. It also reduces cognitive load. Rather than simply facing a blank page, the user is taken step by step through a familiar structure that they're already used to. This makes the interaction feel more manageable and leads to stronger outputs. The third rule was probably the most important. So it's making sure the assistant guides and not generates. I didn't want the assistant to create ideas for people because that would reduce ownership and potentially weaken that authenticity. The employee is the person that knows their job best. So the AI is just there to draw out that knowledge more effectively. So I designed the prompts to ask questions, challenge missing details, and help users think through things like frequency, time, and impact, which they may have forgotten. That makes the output much stronger, but it still belongs to the employee. This is also important from a trust and governance perspective because the AI is supporting thought and not replacing judgment. So you can see on the right-hand side, we have said, assume the user understands the job and process best. Your role is to draw out that detail. The fourth rule was about setting boundaries. So this is where the prompting becomes quite important because without boundaries, AI can often sound confident, but it's actually unhelpful or misleading. So I was explicit about what the assistant must not do. It must not invent savings. It must not accept vague complaints or encourage any submissions that might actually be unsuitable to the scheme. I also told it to focus on realistic and implementable improvements based on the guidance documents that we already have. And these boundaries help to protect the quality, keep the assistant aligned to the scheme, and reduce the risk of outputs that sound good but don't really stand up. In other words, the boundaries don't actually limit the usefulness, it helps to improve it. And finally, it was about using real context. So this is what helps stop the assistant from feeling just like a generic AI bot. So I grounded it, which means I trained it based on documents that we already have and use in Ricoh's bright idea process. So that includes the real form sections, the real benefit categories, the actual language employees would be expected to use, and then it even finishes it with a final action of telling people to paste it into the submission form with a link to it. I also specified plain workplace language and UK spelling because small details like that matter if you want something to feel more natural and usable internally. And this is really where the difference comes in between a general AI tool and a purpose-built business assistant. So the closer the prompt reflects the real world process, the more useful the output actually becomes. So I've got some key takeaways is that AI agents don't happen by accident. They are designed, and prompt design is the biggest part of that. Having a good prompt design helps agents become more useful, more reliable, more consistent, more aligned to the business process, and more trusted by users. Being clear on the role, structuring the interaction, guiding rather than generating, setting boundaries, and grounding everything in real context. That's what helps it turn from a generic chatbot into something that actually adds value to the business. And I think that applies far beyond this one use case as well. So I'm going to show you a little demo of how our assistant actually works. So this is our current form. So this is what people are asked to fill in. You'll see that there's 3 main sections, which is present situation, suggested improvement, and predicted benefits. So this is usually what people would just type into what their suggestion was. So the button to get started is what allows you to get that first prompt. And then you can see within a few seconds, you'll get a prompt from the chatbot describing what details it needs from you. So as mentioned, we're structuring this by step, and we want to answer those 3 questions. I'm going to post in an example of a basic suggestion. It has the details, but it could be made a lot better. So we currently manage many internal admin requests through a mixture of emails, spreadsheets, and manual updates. This can result in duplicated entries, inconsistent information, and time spent chasing missing details or checking which version of a tracker is most up to date. Different teams may record different information in different ways, making reporting and progress tracking more difficult. Introducing a simple standard request form linked to one central tracker could help improve consistency, reduce admin, improve visibility, and create more efficient processes for employees and admins. So you can see after a few seconds, it has used that information that I've put in to create a draft of each section. So you can see that the 3 sections I've asked it to define. So the 1, which is the present situation, 2, suggested improvement, and 3, predicted benefits. It is giving you a draft, but it's also given you a list of questions of things that you might be missing, which would usually come back from the review panel. And then once you get to the bottom, it will also provide a summary of all of those improvements, and then gives you details on what to do next. So what I'm going to do is look through those questions and add more information to answer those questions. So what we're adding is, so these are communication requests. We roughly get 15 per week as a team of 2. Most time is lost by checking for duplications and chasing requests for more information. Estimation of around 15 minutes per request, reduction to 2 minutes, and a brief members on the team around £15 per hour if you wanted to get a cost saving. So you can see it now generates a full draft of my present situation, suggested improvements, and breakdown of predicted benefits. And you can also see it's even worked out the time saved and cost savings based on that information that I gave. So obviously I gave it was 15 minutes, there's 2 people, it was done 15 times a day. And you can see it's given me an annual saving of hours and also a cost avoidance as well. So once the user is happy with the output, you can obviously go back and forth if you want to add more details. It gives you the link of where people can submit it. And then it's just a simple case of being able to copy that information and paste it into the current form. And this turns a process that could have taken 15-20 minutes into one simple 5-minute quick idea. So just around some of the most important aspects. So governance was really important from the start, something we built alongside the solution rather than afterwards. One of the key drivers for moving to Copilot was the security. So when employees are submitting ideas, there's always that potential for proprietary or sensitive information to be included, especially if it's about processes. So we needed to ensure that this was all handled within a secure and controlled environment. We also made sure to align everything with our own internal AI policy, which sets clear expectations around ethical, lawful, and responsible use of AI across the business. And we also wanted to make sure that we are compliant with data protection and IP awareness. So no sharing of sensitive or protected information beyond approved scope, and having strong consideration of intellectual property and data privacy. However, the most important thing is that human oversight remains central. So the AI supports the process, but employees remain responsible for the content decisions and that final submission. And ultimately, this isn't just about what AI can do, it's about what AI should do within a business context. So that combination of usability, control, and policy alignment is what made this viable to implement in practice. So we have deployed this to a controlled group of users for trial, ready for deployment site-wide. What we've seen is a positive shift in both the quality of submissions and the overall experience for employees. The biggest immediate impact is in the quality. So ideas and nominations are much more structured, clearer, and ready for review from the start. Alongside that, employees feel more confident contributing. They're not starting from a blank page anymore. They have that guidance that helps them understand what good looks like and how to get there. We've also seen a clearer reduction in time, whether that's time in actually writing the improvement, but also from the process perspective, there's less time spent on follow-ups and clarifications from the review panel and the specialists, which helps speed up evaluation and decision making. Overall, it means we're capturing more value from the engagement that already exists, better ideas, clearer recognition, and a smoother experience for everyone that's involved. For us, this wasn't about generating more ideas. It was about improving the ones we already have, making it easier for employees to contribute in the first place. So although this idea started around recognition, the approach itself is much broader. Anywhere where employees may need guidance or clarity or access to information at the point of doing something, there's the opportunity to apply something like this. So just a few examples. In HR, you could help employees quickly understand policies and reduce reliance on manual searches or physical HR queries. In branding, so around my role, we can have digital brand advisors providing real-time guidance on brand standards to improve consistency and reduce that review cycle. And then really anywhere that has a knowledge or process support, so it could support employees across department with structured guidance and access to approved information. So this isn't just about one solution, it's a scalable approach to improving how people interact with information and processes across the business. So I know that's been a lot of information, but just in terms of final thoughts, AI is no longer a future concept. It's already reshaping the way that organizations work, communicate, and engage with their employees. So while there are understandable concerns around AI adoption, the real opportunity lies in how we choose to use it. AI shouldn't replace people, creativity, or human connection. Instead, when implemented responsibly, it can remove those repetitive tasks, improve access to information, and personalize employee experiences, and allows teams to focus on more meaningful and strategic work. The reality is that AI adoption is accelerating rapidly. So a few little stats from Microsoft: 81% of business leaders expect AI agents to be integrated into their company strategy within the next 12 to 18 months. And there are expected to be more than 1.3 billion AI agents in operation by 2028. The shift is happening whether organizations are ready or not. These companies, the companies that will benefit most are those that embrace AI thoughtfully with clear governance, transparency, and a people-first mindset. Used correctly, AI can help improve employee engagement, communication, access to knowledge and support, productivity and operational efficiency, employee well-being through reduced administrative burden, and personalized learning and development experiences. However, that successful adoption depends on trust. Employees need to understand why AI is being introduced, how it will be used, what safeguards are in place, and most importantly, that AI is there to support them, not replace them. AI is ultimately a tool. It impacts depends on how responsibly, ethically, and collaboratively we choose to use it. So my final thought is the goal is not to create a workplace run by AI, it's to create workplaces where people are empowered by it. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll take any questions.
Fabulous, Courtney. Thank you so much. And if anyone does have a question for Courtney, then please do either pop it into the chat or put your hand up and we will come to you. I mean, Courtney, just a question from me to kick us off whilst others are kind of thinking about any questions they might like to ask. I mean, this all looks fantastic. When you said you kind of the purposeful prompting and you kind of almost created the chatbot to deliver what you need and to make sure it was very much a Ricoh engagement, bright ideas focus. I mean, how easy is that to actually do? Because having never done it before, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, well, ironically, you can use AI to help your prompting. So as long as you have a clear kind of understanding of exactly what you want, then it's easy to kind of turn that into terms of prompting. So like I said, making sure that it's clear what you actually want it to do and what you don't want it to do, making sure that you've got those step by steps of, this is how I want you to start, this is how I want you to finish, this is ultimately the output that we want. Then it's pretty easy to then put that into a prompt. And again, you can use AI to help you write the prompt that then goes in. And then it's just about testing, trialing it, testing it. We went back and forth. Obviously, Jane is a subject matter expert, so she was the first to kind of review it, make sure that she was happy with the outputs. And then ultimately you deploy it, and you can always make changes fairly easily.
And how reliable have you found? Have you had to make lots of different changes, or were you kind of pretty much there on the first go?
It's make it, you can make a few changes. Obviously, it's never going to be perfect the first time. It's all dependent on that prompt. But the good thing about some of these the AI kind of, whether it's ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, is you can ground it on certain information. So I think I mentioned that you can have it so it doesn't go into the abyss and search for information all over the internet. You can have it structured just on the information that you provide it with, whether that's a documentation about like scheme criteria, or if you have policies and procedures, you can upload them to make sure it's only using that information in its outputs rather than searching all over the internet.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And I don't know if anyone's got any questions. Oh, we do have from Josh, um, communications lead at Ricoh, so working alongside you. Um, it's worth noting that you've also made an improvement to the improvement itself. So for employees to use the chatbots, bespoke links have been created with unique codes. So we have full visibility of how many employees are using the AI agents, when, what device type, etc. Oh, that's really good. So you can really track how well the system is being used as well. A truly wonderful idea. And I look forward to seeing how this helps shape the future of AI activities and horizontal deployment. Really, really soon. So thank you. Has anyone got any other questions for Courtney? I've got one final one to give anybody the opportunity to put any remaining questions into chat, or even share how you are using AI. Oh, yeah, we've got a question. How has the reception from users been? Oh, that's an interesting one. Great question.
Yeah, so like I said, we've only trialed this out at the moment, but from what we've seen so far, people have found it a lot easier to create those suggestions. People are more confident in submitting them rather than kind of trying to think up something that they would have done beforehand. We've also seen that it's a lot quicker, like I mentioned in that demo. It could have been 15-20 minutes, depending on how confident you were writing suggestions up in the first place, not least to take into account all the back and forth with the review panel if they had missing information. So that reduction in time as well, I think, is very much appreciated from people, that having that extra time to kind of do other stuff rather than trying to write up a suggestion. I think Jane also is probably appreciative of the extra time, not having to go back and forth with people as well.
I can completely understand that from a user's perspective. So no, brilliant. That's really great, because you're right. So many times when, new technology comes in, people are quite reluctant, whereas the fact that they can easily see how this is so beneficial is great news. So where do you think, what's next for AI?
I think, like the stats say, I think it's inevitable that we're going to have to start using it. I think a lot of companies are adopting it now. I know we are looking into more AI and how we can implement it across the business. So I think it's a useful tool, but as mentioned, you need that governance. You need to make sure that you are explaining to people why you're using it, because I think there's a lot of fear around the use of AI. So I think as long as you're rolling it out in a way that is understandable to employees, I think it should should be a very useful tool for a lot of companies.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Courtney. So unless you've got any final questions, I would like to say a massive thank you for sharing how you are using AI. Even I appreciate this is still in pilot form, but really successfully so far to really kind of generate the quality of idea. And I think that that's the nice thing. It's not necessarily about quantity, it's about the quality, and hopefully like less backwards and forwards. So reduce time for Jane as well as the coordinator, because the quality of the idea is so much better. So it's not taking away humans, but really enhancing what we do, which is again, to bring it back to conference, exactly the theme of our conference, the 11th and 12th of November this year. So thank you so much to Courtney. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. Please do join us at the next session on the 9th of June, where Sue Davis, the Director of Innovation for the Ministry of Justice, will be sharing her experiences of managing innovation in a rather large, sprawling organisation. But for now, thanks so much, Courtney. That was really interesting and lovely to have a hands-on practical example of how AI is being used. So really, really appreciate you sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you.